Hey guys, on today's real quick show is we are walking through all things you need to know for April 24th. We're going to be talking about the latest in what happened with the House and the PPP, and then also what's going on with personal stimulus checks and unemployment. So go ahead, check it out, and make sure you stay to the end because we will walk you through, if you are a small business, how to make sure that you get your PPP round 2 if you didn't get it round 1. Check it out. Hey everyone, welcome back to another update for everything stimulus. I'm Logan.
And I'm Nadine.
And today we're going over the latest update. It is April 23rd, and the big update is starting off with the PPP. Nadine, hit us with what happened today, PPP related.
All right, so a couple of days ago, we talked about the Senate passed an extension of PPP, more stimulus. It went to the House, and today the House of Representatives actually got it through. They passed it and sent it off to the president. So what we have going on is the extension of the stimulus package for small businesses, a couple other caveats as we discussed before. All in, the package is $484 billion.
So the $484 billion, I mean, how does that compare to the first package that went through?
It's actually bigger. The first package was around $360 billion. And as we know, money ran out real quick. We went through it. How we got from 360 now to 484, a big part of it is, as we discussed before, $100 billion that's going to the healthcare industry, 75 of it going to hospitals and medical facilities, and then another 25 to testing centers so that we can expand the reach of actual testing to make sure that we have accurate readings of how many new cases and how many cases we're able to actually cure and how many people we can get back to normal.
So with the last one, the first one that went through, all the money went for PPP in about 2 weeks. And a lot of that, it seemed to me like it's just because like nobody really had their stuff together. But now that there's like a process more so in place, how long do they expect this larger package to actually last?
Yeah, so a part of it is, again, we don't know if they're just gonna keep pushing the old applications through. So a lot of people with the initial PPP got their apps submitted and got them in on time. However, they were on the back end of the queue and they got their applications reviewed, they got the applications processed, but they never got sent off to the SBA to get funded. So now the question is, will bankers just take those, the ones that they've already reviewed and processed, and push them through to get funded? And that's the most likely scenario. So if that's the case, there were so many small businesses that didn't get funded in PPP 1 that now they're gonna likely get the funding. And so in terms of time frame, I think that in the next 2 to 3 days, we're very likely to run out or be very close to capacity with PPP because you've also had a lot more news about it. So people who didn't initially apply for it now have their stuff together and will be able to submit it tomorrow if the president signs it. Whenever he signs it, I think more people are going to be ready to go. The question is also, at what point will the banks open up their portals again for new applications? We saw with the first round that depending on who you bank with, their portals were at different times. And so that's another question. And the second derivative of, will banks now start accepting non-customers? That was a huge deal with the first go around, that the banks that were doing them, that were processing quickly, only worked with current customers. So now, as we have more funding, more capacity, does that change?
So with that, I know, or I guess they're trying to limit publicly traded companies from getting the second round. So what are they doing to help out the mom and pops that need this versus those that can just sell a bunch of shares?
Yeah, and that's been the big issue with the first one, and banks giving preference to their biggest customers, right? So we saw that with Shake Shack, Ruth's Chris, a few other ones, and most of them have given it back because of the backlash, because people are saying, look, you can go to the public markets, you can raise equity, you can raise debt. Why are you taking money from small businesses? And within this new legislation, they're trying to limit public companies from doing that, from taking away from the small ones, by really going through a process of proving that they cannot access money elsewhere. So now the standard for big companies or public companies has elevated so that they can't just get this money and in effect screw the little guy. So it's a very positive development that we've seen from the first one to the second one.
So they did a pretty good job of understanding who really got the money the first round, and they're doing everything they can, it seems like, or at least as best as they can, to limit those that may not need it to take advantage and take all the money.
Yeah, they're trying to step up from, obviously it's the government, they're here for oversight. And I think with the first one, you can't really blame them. They were trying to push money as quickly into the system as possible. And with that, you're always going to have some sort of shakeout where some people don't get what they're supposed to. But now they've learned from it. They've had a couple of weeks to figure it out. And now we have positive results out of it.
Perfect. All right. So transitioning from the small business side and the SBA side onto the personal finance, personal stimulus side of things. So I know they came out a couple days ago or recently talking about, at this point, I'm guessing everybody who should have gotten their $1,200 and had their direct deposit on file, they should have all their money in their banks or the bank accounts, right?
Correct. Again, it depends on, did you file 18 or 19? It does depend on, which one is the more recent one. So they look at your most recent one ahead of the other one and whether or not you had direct deposit information on that one. So it could be a case that in 18 you got a refund and you had it direct deposited, but 2019 you owe, and they're not going to use your direct deposit info from 18 because they're looking at your 19 return. But yes, in theory, if you have your direct deposit info on your most recent return, they have used that info and they've pushed out those $1,200 or $2,400 stimulus checks, depending on if you're single or married.
So what happens if you are in that scenario you just talked about? What happens if you had your direct deposit on 18 but not on 19?
So now you're placed into the queue for checks, right? So now you're going into the manual process, which delays it a solid 2, 3, 4 weeks. We do have a schedule now finally, but it does put you at a disadvantage. And now you do have a plan though. You still can go to irs.gov and there's a blue button that says get my payment. And if you click on that, you have that option of entering your direct deposit info in order to hopefully get your stimulus check quicker. Again, there's no promise because now you have two things going on in the system. On one hand, they're moving things to send you a check, and now in the middle of that process, you're entering your direct deposit info, which could confuse the system and again create some delays for you. So think about what your real action step here is. You also have to think about, if you're getting a check, what's your address of record with the IRS?
So what should they do? Should they, if they didn't get their check already because they didn't have their direct deposit on file, should they try to go to that login or that portal and put it in, or should they wait? Just try it?
I would put my info into the portal. Biggest reason being is if it works, great, I'll get my money sooner. If it doesn't work, I'll get a check. So there's no losing here. You're gonna get the check, worst case scenario, and best case scenario, you enter your direct deposit info and you get it sooner.
Okay, so from that, so you're getting your money, and I know a lot of people are needing it right now because there's a lot, unemployment is what? I guess everything that we made up from 09 is gone now? Like, what is all that?
Yeah, so today the numbers came out, and the headline news is we've essentially lost all the jobs that we've created in the last 10 years. What that means is when we had our last recession, 08, 09, so many jobs were lost that, if you graph it, we were basically at the bottom in terms of jobs. And then in the last 10, 11 years, we've created jobs and we've hired more people. And that's a great thing for the economy. That's why we had GDP growth. That's why everything was going so great. And now in a matter of 6 weeks, so many people have been laid off, or whether, it's not the traditional firing, but people have been laid off and are going on unemployment because of this. And what that is saying is from the trough in 08, 09 to the peak 6, 7, 8 weeks ago, we're all the way back to where we started. And that is an unfortunate thing. That is a statistic, because again, we still have to think about what it really means. And currently it doesn't mean anything because of all the stimulus. We've talked about unemployment checks. We've talked about the extra $600 a week that people on unemployment are getting now. And we've also talked about the $1,200, $2,400 stimulus economic impact payments that people are getting. So it's way different than 08 and 09. I think it's a statistic that's just thrown out there without the relevance.
So it doesn't mean that that's necessarily cause for mass panic, because it's just a completely different situation than it was 11 years ago.
Absolutely. So 11 years ago, people lost their jobs and they literally had to go looking for jobs that didn't exist. This go around, people are laid off because malls are closed, restaurants are closed, the airlines are struggling because nobody's flying. What else are companies supposed to do? They have to lay them off. But again, it's getting backstopped by the government and all the stimulus. So it's not as bad. We're still not seeing people default on credit cards, default on car payments, default on mortgages. And even in all of those industries, we're seeing forbearance. We're seeing credit givers, credit lenders allowing us to push it back when things go back to normal. Whether that's the right thing for somebody to do or not is a different conversation. But we have more options than we've ever had to make it through this terrible number on paper, but it's really not as bad as it seems right now.
So there's a lot of unemployment going on, and the economy is starting to, state by state, slowly open up. In Georgia, I don't know if you've heard this yet, but you're allowed to, if you're making more money on unemployment, not go back to work. Have you heard about that?
I have heard about that. Georgia is, I think, one of the first states that wants to reopen. And the governor of Georgia came out, I think Monday or Tuesday of this week, and said, you know what? Friday sounds like a good day. Let's start opening up restaurants, spas, salons. Why not? And the interesting thing is you're seeing a lot of those business owners in those industries actually saying no. There's been a number of them who've come out publicly and said, this is crazy. If I open up my restaurant, people aren't really going to come. They're still going to be scared. So what's the point of opening up? And then again, this flip side of unemployment, right? So if I'm a restaurant owner, my employees currently are collecting whatever their state unemployment benefits are, which isn't a whole lot, but they're also getting $600 a week from the feds. And so that's way more than they'll ever make coming into work and waiting on 2 tables in an 8-hour shift. And so that's, I think that's the disconnect between opening up and hurrying up to that versus reality, and whether or not these people will be able to make money. And so more people are better off just staying on unemployment right now until we can have some sort of normal.
All right, so to wrap all this up, so on the small business PPP side, if you are a small business and you haven't gotten your first round of money, should you have your application ready to go again in case they switch it up, or you just sit back and cross your fingers? What's best plan of action?
The application hasn't changed. So if you've submitted it once, you already have all the data. If you need to resubmit it, it better be packaged somewhere. With all the applications I did for my customers, everybody's got a folder with all the documents. All I have to do is drag and drop if I have to do it again. If you've not applied before, you want to apply, you better get on it because the clock is ticking really quickly. Again, I think that there's this big backlog of applications that need to get funded, and they're going to be first in line. So you do want to get going if you have nothing put together.
Okay. So sounds like if you're a small business, get your stuff together, get it in as best as possible as soon as I guess the banks open back up their portals, because they're closed right now, right?
As far as I know, every single one of them is closed because, again, it's not signed into law, and they still do have that backlog that they're going to have to work through.
All right, cool. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us today. And again, we'll be back tomorrow with more, whatever is the most breaking stuff going on in both the world of, if you're a small business owner, what should you be doing to navigate these waters? And then on the personal side, getting the stimulus check, making sure that if you are unemployed, you're continuing to be able to survive, and we'll do everything we can to keep bringing you the latest and greatest info. Have a good night and day. Thank you.
See ya.